Thanks for joining me, Sarah. It's lovely to see you again this morning. I think we last saw each other at the CSTA conference. And obviously we'd spoken before then, but it was nice to actually see you in person.
Yeah.
Do you want to just kick off by giving me an introduction to yourself and what your business does?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for inviting me to join you and have a chat today. So I'm Sarah. I am Managing Director of a shipping container sales and rental company called Secure Stores Nationwide. So we sell and rent containers, and with a sort of specialism on the self-storage industry. So that's kind of 95% of the business we do is into that market. And we launched at the beginning of 2021.
So still sort of very early stage for.
That's right.
Oh, we're frozen.
Yeah, we're babies still.
I mean, nothing compared to us. Just to do an intro for people who don't know me, my name's Anna and I'm the CEO and founder of Explorage.com, and we're the online marketplace for self-storage. So yeah, we soft launched in November, so we're babies comparably to you.
Yeah.
And what's your background? Like, how did you find yourself in self-storage firstly, and then obviously taking the leap into building your own business?
Yeah, well, it's a great big accident, really. So it was 16 years ago that I joined the container industry. I had left university and I was basically looking for a job in an office while I worked out what I wanted to do as a real job. So as things sometimes go, I started with a local container company and just absolutely loved it. So I kind of worked my way up there, and eventually I was made a director after a few years and ran the business. And yeah, just loved it. And then in 2016, that business was sold, and I continued to work for the new owners for a few years. I think it was almost 3 years, which was interesting to see how other businesses did things, and you can learn a lot and soak things up. And then it was 2020 that I left there, and after a few months off, started Secure Stores on I think it was like 1st of January in 2021.
Wow. Okay. So you say you loved it. What was it that you loved particularly about it?
I particularly love a private business environment, because of the kind of, I guess you can be so agile. You can make decisions on what's best for customers and the business as a whole, and move quickly on that. I love working with others as well. So having a team alongside you and all kind of celebrating together when you have successes and watching the business grow. It's rewarding. Yeah, it's addictive.
Yeah. It is. It's funny how business is addictive, isn't it?
Yeah.
And in that sort of downtime then between leaving the previous company and starting your new company, did you have a sense that you were going to start a new business, or were you just sort of open to see what came along? Or?
I did have a sense, yeah. The only reason I had a period of a few months off was that I had a non-compete clause in my contract. So I had to stay out of the industry for 6 months, which was interesting. It was very strange, not kind of getting up and going to work each day. And we were in the middle of a global pandemic, which was also interesting. But the house has never been cleaner or more freshly decorated. And I must have walked hundreds and hundreds of miles in that time. But all the time, obviously, I was thinking and planning, how I wanted to launch the business and so on, and what direction I wanted it to take. So plenty of good time to plan, I guess, and think about how I wanted to do things.
I'm just there we go. I think we're back. Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like it was actually quite good timing, really, in the context of things, and giving you that space to think about how you were going to sort of launch your comeback. It's a big thing, isn't it? Starting a business, and It's worth
It
taking that
certainly
time.
is. And it was, I mean, some people obviously were saying to me, "Oh, you're starting a business in the middle of a pandemic. You know, what are you doing? Are you
Yeah.
sure this is the right decision?" But yeah, I always knew it was the right thing to do. So
Yeah, no, definitely. And that in terms of like just while we're on that theme of starting a business, if you were to speak to somebody who was thinking about getting into self-storage or building a self-storage business, particularly a container-based self-storage
yeah,
business, what advice would you give them?
I would say think big, because something I've noticed, especially if someone's fresh into the industry and they haven't run a self-store before, they can't picture in their mind, understandably, you know, the thought of having 400 containers on their site and customers for them all. You know, they just think, well, surely it couldn't possibly get that big. But believe me, it does. They just keep going and going. So I think plan for a decent sized site so that you can get your layout right, and allow access for you know, extra levels and things in the future. So making sure the lorry can get back in and so on, and that your foundations are good in case you do decide to go too high. Because obviously you're placing a lot of extra weight then on the bottom container, and if you haven't got good footings, then boxes can shift a little bit and the doors become stiff, and you don't really want to be moving containers once you've got customers' goods in there, obviously, because there's a risk of something getting broken, or and the chances of a whole row of them being empty at the same time is pretty much non-existent.
Yeah,
So yeah, think big, and trust in the industry, because it is a great industry to be in. Hence why my business is built around supply to it.
yes, yeah, absolutely. And in terms of supply in the industry then, and how you position yourself in the industry, what's your priorities? What's your mission then?
So quality is one of them. So I always aim for sort of top spec containers. So when you order them from the factories in China, you can obviously choose how you have them built, whether that's things like paint spec, ventilation, features like easy open door handles and things. So I'm always equipping the containers with self-storage friendly features, shall we say. So that's one thing. And then really the focus is on customer service. So trying to make sure that customers have an efficient, smooth, friendly and helpful service, and building a bit of a partnership with them, really. So, you know, I can see several months ahead what factory prices are doing, and I've always believed in sharing that information with clients, keeping them abreast of what the situation is so that they can plan their spending, and that those relationships are best. It's, you know, and that doesn't necessarily do me any favors, but in the long run it will do, because people know that they can trust you and that what you tell them is going to be the truth.
Yeah, yeah.
About, you know, what's coming in the following months.
I think the business landscape has changed a lot over the last year or two in terms of what people value now, and certainly
Yep.
we see it on the B2C side of our self-storage network, is that customers really value that authentic voice, that no nonsense, actually just treating people like human beings. And so when we talk about our mission, like, to talk very, very broadly, we talk about, we just want to make life easier for everybody.
Yeah.
And that's literally everybody we come into contact with. Self-storage network, our customers, and our team, you know, between us and our stakeholders, so literally everybody. And I think how we go about that is treating people as human beings first, as people first.
Yeah.
And when you think about it in that context, you just think, well, yeah, there's no room for sort of disingenuous, just salesy spiel, is there? And I think people are just wise to it now. So no, that's good. I can definitely empathize with that approach.
And it's not anything new, and it's easy to do, actually. If you're planning a process or something, if you put the customer at the beginning and what's easiest for them, and then you work backwards, you can't go wrong really if you keep the customer in mind and what's easy for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of your business specifically, then, what do you find the most challenging?
Oh well, where do I start? No.
Not a question you want to answer.
It's never easy. Never easy running a business, but it's hugely rewarding and enjoyable.
Yeah.
In terms of, I'm not even talking about financially. That's almost last on the list sometimes. It's the fun of actually enjoying it and building something that's you can be proud of, I suppose. So I think day-to-day challenges, it's for me personally, it's the usual sorts of things that any business owner will have. You know, you have internal battles in your mind sometimes about the right thing to do, whether it's how much stock you should be ordering, you know, what's coming next with the price. Should you be ordering that much? Will the price drop further? Is that a good decision to make? When you're planning your purchasing, am I ordering the right colors? Are, you know, the right quantities of each colors to make sure I'm anticipating client demand so that I've always got the stock there ready to go. Is sometimes obviously you get the odd issue, and that can be stressful. I hate it if something goes wrong. But I suppose the important thing is dealing with it correctly, and then that way, if you jump on it and fix it and make sure your client's happy, then I think generally people are very, very forgiving if you handle things correctly.
That's it. Just being professional, isn't it, and how you go about things. And...
Yeah. So just the usual stresses of running a business.
I imagine with like your industry in particular, that those fluctuations in market conditions and seasonal conditions must be one of the larger headaches, or not necessarily headaches, but one of those challenges that is you really have to use all of your business skills to juggle.
There are, and I think that's actually been slightly more challenging since the pandemic, because during the pandemic, you basically had to tear up the rule book. So everything that you'd done for the last 13 years that I'd been in the industry prior to that, you basically had to tear it up because the demand was just high constantly for self-storage, you know, throughout the year. And there were supply issues as well, and you just couldn't get the boxes in fast enough. But it was tricky because the factory price was rising and rising and rising, and you thought, at what point is it going to peak? So, you know, the temptation is to order vast amounts of stock. And then the exchange rate is another factor that you have to try and constantly second guess what's going to happen next, because we buy the containers in dollars and sell them in sterling. So you're always wondering which point to fix your currency. So yeah,
that's interesting. I wouldn't have even thought about that side of things.
Yeah, there's that, and obviously the delays that were experienced in shipment during the pandemic were unprecedented. That's never happened before. So just another challenge to add to the list, but we got through it, and I think came out the other side stronger and learned some stuff. And
at where we are at the moment, are you noticing any particular trends? I mean, the one thing we're noticing is there's quite a demand for, say, 10-foot containers, or to put that into square feet, typically roughly 80 square foot. But then the cost of those is exponentially more versus a 20-foot. So we're sort of constantly getting that feedback from storage operators in the container or external storage sort of sector saying, well, you know, it just doesn't make sense, even though the demand is there. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think that's an age-old problem, and it's whether you know this or not, but it's because the small units get shipped in empty because the shipping lines won't use them for cargo. So you're paying freight to get them moved from China to the UK, so it pushes the cost up. I mean, for example, at the minute, a 10-foot costs more than a 20-foot. But we try, and there are some products. I'm not sure if you saw my LinkedIn post in the last couple of days, but there are some products we've developed to try and create smaller spaces. So there's some compartmentalized units, which are either Chinese built ones with little container doors on, or stuff that we've converted in the UK with roller doors on and things like that. So they can be quite good. Or if layout allows, people can use a double-ended 20-foot container. So it's what we call a tunnel, and you can put a partition in the middle, and that works out a lot cheaper than buying 2 individual 10-foots. But you just have to plan that into your layout, because you'll need access to both ends of a 20-foot. So it doesn't suit everywhere on every site, but generally these are the sorts of discussions we have with clients. They'll come and say, oh, we want some smaller spaces, and then we talk about all the options and what might be most practical.
And do you facilitate that dividing of space as well then?
Yeah. So we are resellers for a company called QuickFit Container Accessories, who you may well know. So they sell a removable steel partition. So you can we can deliver that direct to the client, and they're super simple to put up. I think Michael actually has a video somewhere on QuickFit's page where he puts one up on his own within a matter of minutes, which was very impressive. But yes, so those are quite a neat solution. Or we weld in a permanent partition. The nice thing about the removable ones is that if you change your mind later and you want to let it as a 20-foot, or have an 8-foot and a 12-foot space or whatever, it's flexible. So it's
and do the 20-foot tunnels then, are they able to be used for freight, or do they just have to come as cargo?
They are. So they cost just a little bit more than a standard 20-foot. So you've got the cost of that plus a partition, but it's still a lot cheaper than buying 2 10-foots. So
that's interesting. And presumably, if you just to future-proof your site, you could potentially order the tunnel, but then it doesn't mean to say you have to be able to access one of the doors, does it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you could do that. You just probably want to put it somewhere where you can access both ends in the future, because otherwise it means moving containers, which can be expensive because you've got to get a hire back in and space for it.
And one of the things you were talking about at the CSTA conference was painting them and branding them up and the courses. And do you want to elaborate on that and what you've seen?
I love doing those. No, so if you've so certain clients, it's particularly clients, I would say, that have an internal facility as well on site, and they've got some really nice branding on that building perhaps, and they've got a really kind of clear color scheme that runs throughout the site. If they've got internal rooms, say their colors yellow or something, all of their storage rooms will have yellow doors and so on. But we find more frequently that we're repainting containers to match someone's branding. So that could be just the door end if they're all in a line. And sometimes it could be, just part of the door, say a top strip at the top in one color and the rest of the doors and the bottom strip in different colors and so on. But they do look very smart, and it's certainly when they're on site with a sort of really nicely branded site, they do certainly finish it off. It's an extra investment, but for some people, that's what they want.
Well, I think from where I've seen them done, and they've been done really well, it then just becomes an extension of that indoor space, doesn't it? And so it's that consistent branding. The customer turns up and they just don't even have to think about it. They can see it's all part of the same offering, just a different type of choice. So no, it seems like a good investment, if you're getting the occupancy on them.
And if they just want a single color as well, we can, and have for clients, we can order a whole batch for them from the factory in one single color, any color of their choice, at no extra cost to a normal 20-foot. The disadvantage is there's a bit of a lead time. So from when we order them, it might take 3 months to get them in. But that's another option for people, which could be a good one. So if you want bright pink containers, then you can have them at no extra cost if you don't mind waiting for them to be built.
I can just imagine some Barbie self-storage popping up.
That's it. Yeah.
Surprised we don't already have something, or at least a small Barbie one.
Yeah.
And I was gonna ask you. I mean, it's probably not something that you could commit to long term, but if somebody was setting up a self-storage business, and let's say they just acquired the site or the land, what would be the shortest lead time to them getting some containers on site, or what would be the quickest way of them going about it?
If they're having standard blue or green containers, then those are available ex stock. So it's just a question of delivery lead time. So
Yeah.
usually kind of within a week or so. Sometimes a bit longer if it's a batch, a decent sized batch, just to get the haulage slots.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty rapidly at the moment. And then bespoke stuff, you just have to add a few weeks on for any painting or whatever else might be required.
Yeah, that's really quick then, and presumably then that's the beauty of it. If you do go with the more standard colours, that if you want to expand incrementally, you can just draw down pretty much.
And that's usually a discussion I have with clients and say to them, you know, it's important to think about continuity of supply as well. So there's a few things for them to consider, and I would say that those people who've been in self-storage for a longer period of time would be more confident to say, okay, we will put this batch down that we're going to have built especially for us in a specific color all in one go. Because they'll be able to predict perhaps how long they'll last them, and they will know that they will fill them in time. Whereas it's probably a bit more scary for an operator that's new to the industry. Because they haven't built that confidence yet, I suppose.
And it's such a regional model, isn't it? Business model, that you don't really know sort of how quickly it's going to fill up and what the demand's going to be like. So your business then, what's the plans for the future? Well,
watch this space. No. So we've been looking at, I think, some new products possibly on the horizon. We have recently partnered with USC, who supply a flat pack insulated store. It's not a shipping container. They've kind of got flat side panels and very easy to open doors. They're not shipping containers. And we have now very recently received the first batch of stock of those in the UK. So more info to follow on those. And they'll be available on a longer lead time in any colour you like, because they're actually manufactured in China as well. So we'd have them built specially. So that's something that in partnership with those we can do. And then really we'll just be thinking about what's next, really, what will be useful for clients, how can we improve our products, I guess, to make them as friendly as possible for the self-storage market.
And is it a business model that tends to be focused on a country, so in this case the UK, or is it something that you could see, like if there was traction gaining in Europe? Obviously the container sites are less popular over there, but is that something that you could explore in time, or is that not
possibly? No plans to do so at the current time. Got plenty to keep us busy in the UK. But there are definitely some sites in Europe, and probably some good well-equipped suppliers to set up there to service their needs already, because there are similar businesses to us, obviously, all across Europe.
So. Good. Okay, well, thank you very much, Sarah. I really appreciate your time today. If anybody wanted to get in touch with you, how do they contact you?
So the website is www.securestores.co.uk, or email us at sales@securestores.co.uk, and phone numbers and whatnot are on the website there. So or LinkedIn. So I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. If you want to connect, please do.
I particularly liked your rubber duck post on socials the other day. Was it how many rubber ducks in a container or something?
Yeah, I think what it was about, loads that got the cargo of a container that was full of rubber ducks spilt. It fell off a ship and went into the sea, and they basically used it for studying ocean current behavior or patterns. So they were washing up in various places, and they learned quite a lot. So it turned out to be useful for research.
Quite an enduring lead.
Yeah, that's it. I think they still show up sometimes on beaches.
Oh, wow. Oh, well, thanks very much, Sarah, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for inviting me. Good to speak to you.
All right, see you.